pollution and waste, and we've been talking a lot about the amount of garbage we produce in our society and what happens to that garbage when we throw it away, and why does it matter, and why should we care. And one of the biggest components of our landfills is actually food waste. And that matters because it impacts climate change, believe it or not. So anyway, as part of our class's learning, we've invited, this is Liz Miller, to my left over here, from an organization called Spoonfuls, and she's going to be talking to you about their work in food recovery and redistribution, and how in collecting food that would otherwise be wasted and ending up in landfills and redistributing it to people who do not have enough to eat, this organization is mitigating a couple of really big societal problems. So anyway, I think you're going to be kind of interactive. I'm hoping you'll all participate. Connect students, you definitely need to be participatory. And please take some good notes for us. Josiah, you need Mr. Blue went to make copies for you. He'll get you, okay? But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you, Liz, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, I think. Is it afternoon? Yes, it is. I've had a weird day already, so I don't know what time it is. Again, my name is Liz. I'm the Senior Community Relations Manager at Spoonfuls, and I'll tell you all a little bit about what that means. I'll talk a bit about what the team at Spoonfuls does and the different roles there so you can get a better sense. But I'll start by saying part of my role is to talk about the issues that underpin our work. So you just heard a little bit about those issues. We sit at the intersection of wasted food, food insecurity, and the climate emergency. So I'm going to tell you kind of why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and talk a bit more about those issues. And I'm going to pause a few times to take questions. So as I'm going, if you have questions, log them in your mind, and then I'll make sure there's space for that. I want this to be like conversational as best as we can make it. So please do ask any and all questions. I much prefer that to me just up here talking for the next almost hour. So if we could jump to the next slide, I'm going to start with a few questions for you all just to kind of set the scene. This says quick questions. It should say quick questions. So starting with the first one, who's heard of food recovery? Has anybody heard of the term food recovery? Okay. A couple hands up.
He said quick questions. She said
quick questions. I have several quick questions. So food recovery, hands up high if you've heard of food recovery. Okay, a few hands. And what about food rescue? Has anybody heard of food rescue? So pro tip, food recovery and food rescue are the same thing. We use the term food recovery at Spoonfuls, but if you hear somebody talking about food rescue, it's the same deal as what we do at Spoonfuls. Who's heard of the term food insecurity? Okay. Can anybody tell me the difference between hunger and food insecurity? Yeah.
Like, hunger is just like not having food. Food insecurity is like worrying if you're going to.
Yeah, that's definitely like in the ballpark for sure. Yes, and there's an and to that. Anyone want to add the and or more? Yeah.
Hunger is more like the feeling of not having food. Like, I'm hungry right now. Food insecurity is like when you can't access food because many reasons.
Totally, and the worrying is a big part of food insecurity, and you hit the nail on the head there. So hunger is like the physical feeling you have. So you might feel hungry before lunch, right? And a lot of people in the United States and Massachusetts, across the world, they are feeling hunger persistently because they're experiencing chronic food insecurity. Food insecurity is not knowing where your next meal is coming from, not knowing how you're going to get it, not having enough money or the transportation to get that food. And so you can be facing food insecurity but not necessarily be hungry because maybe you've got food but you don't have the right food for your household. You don't have access to the food you need and want. You don't have access to the food you need because of your medical situation, because you have like other dietary restrictions, or you only have access to certain kinds of food and, for example, can't access fresh produce as just one example. So food insecurity is not having adequate access to the food you need and want. Sometimes that means you're feeling hungry, but generally it means you're concerned about where your next meal is coming from. What about food pantry? Who's heard of a food pantry? Cool. Yep, a lot of our partners are food pantries. Who's heard of a landfill? Or transfer station? Same deal. When I was a kid, people called them dumps. Nobody calls them that anymore. So that's a big one that we're going to talk about. Who's heard of compost? Does anybody here have a compost bin at home? Or like a bin in your yard? Nice. Okay. Who here has learned about climate change in school or anywhere? Okay. Emissions? Do folks know what emissions are? Greenhouse gas emissions? Okay, cool. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that for anybody who's not clued in there yet. So we're going to be talking about all of that stuff today, and if you're wondering how all of those things fit together and why I'm asking you all these questions, I think it will start to make sense as we go. So we can jump to the next slide and actually just skip it because it's a title. Keep going. Perfect. Okay, so today we're going to talk about food that gets wasted, why it's getting wasted, why that matters, and we'll talk a bit about what you all can do about it as well. We can jump to the next one. One more jump. So at Spoonfuls we do food recovery, which means we are picking up still good, perfectly good food that's getting wasted for one reason or another, and we are distributing that to community organizations. So we talked about food pantries. A lot of our partners are food pantries, but we provide food to meal programs, to after-school programs, to senior centers, to veterans shelters, a whole range of partner types. So we recover that food and distribute it to those partners, and then we also do education and advocacy, which is a big part of my role and what I'm doing here with you all today. We can jump to the next slide. So this is why we do what we do at Spoonfuls. About 1/3 of food in the United States goes unsold or uneaten every year. 1/3. So I'm just gonna let that sink in for a minute. Imagine you went to the grocery store and you bought 3 big bags of food and then you just put one in the trash. Or just dropped it in the parking lot on your way to the car and just left it there. 1/3 of food in the United States is going unsold or uneaten every year. And meanwhile, here in Massachusetts, about 1 in 3 households are facing food insecurity. So we talked about what that means. So you've got all of that waste and all of that food insecurity side by side, and a lot of the waste is perfectly good food that could have been eaten. So when you put those things side by side, it's kind of absurd that both of those are happening. Meanwhile, food waste takes up more space in landfills than anything else. So if you go to the local landfill or the transfer station, whatever you want to call it, about between 20 and 25% of what you're going to see there is food. It's the #1 material in landfills. And again, a lot of that food was perfectly good and ended up there for one reason or another, but could have been eaten. And when that food is sitting in the landfill, it's rotting and it's emitting greenhouse gases. In particular, it's emitting methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. You hear a lot about carbon dioxide, but methane is even more powerful than carbon dioxide. It has a much more rapid impact on our atmosphere. So it's a really big problem, and it's contributing the methane emissions from food waste are about 6% of global greenhouse gas emissions, which doesn't sound like a big number, but if you think about the fact that that's coming from this waste that shouldn't be happening, it's a lot. There's a big impact that we could make there if we stopped wasting food. So this is why we do what we do. The waste, the food insecurity, and the climate impacts of that waste. We can jump to the next slide. To put this differently, in New England, we waste enough food to fill Fenway Park every 11 days. So if you see Fenway there, it's like a big bowl, kind of. Imagine filling it every 11 days with food, and then just then moving that food to the landfill. 33 times a year, we waste enough food in New England to fill Fenway Park like a giant bowl. Next slide. So I talked about how we recover and distribute. I'll talk a bit more about that here. So we're partnering with a lot of grocery stores. That's where we recover most of our food. I'll share a few of the specific spots in this region in a couple minutes, but it's a lot of grocery stores, some wholesale distributors, so the folks who distribute the food to the grocery stores or to the restaurants, some farms, some farmers markets. We've also started working with universities recently, so their dining halls, they'll make 10 trays of chicken, but they only send out 5 for service, and we can recover the other 5 at the end of the day. We recover from Gillette Stadium, so we get a ton of prepared food that they're not serving during their events. So we partner with all sorts of businesses like that. We pick up that food from them. They're donating it, so they donate that food. We pick it up. We deliver it with our team on the road and our refrigerated vehicles. So that's one of our trucks there. And we have a fully professional team, so we don't work with volunteers. A lot of programs like ours do, but we want to be really consistent and really reliable, so we have a fully professional team on the road driving our trucks. The trucks are refrigerated to keep the food safe, and they distribute it directly to the community organizations I already mentioned. We can jump to the next slide. So we work across the state. Our biggest footprint is in Greater Boston. So we talk a lot about the routes that we operate. We have 10 routes. So we have 4 in Greater Boston, so 4 trucks moving food around in Greater Boston. 1 up in Merrimack Valley in Essex County, so like up towards Salem, for example. 1 in southeastern Mass, and we're putting another truck on the road there this fall because there's need. Like, there is room for expansion of our work because there is such great need as far as food insecurity goes, so we are continuously expanding. So we just put a new truck on the road in southeastern Mass in September, and we're putting another truck on the road in that region this year in September as well. 2 trucks in Metro West, 1 in Worcester County, and 1 out as far as Hampden County and Springfield. So we're all over the state, actively expanding because we know there's tons of food being wasted everywhere and people who could eat it. Next slide. So again, that's a picture of one of our trucks, and now that you've seen it, you might notice us around because we do work in this region. They're very cute little trucks. And that's a picture of one of our trucks, pretty full. It's not full to the brim though. I've seen them like packed to the gills, like all the way to the top, completely filled with boxes. Those all have banana pictures on them, but they're not bananas. We use banana boxes because they're really sturdy and work really well, but those trucks can haul like as much as 4,000 or 5,000 pounds of food a day, and they often exceed that. And that's 1 truck, and we've got 10 trucks moving food around the state every day. So a lot of food being moved. Next slide. So I have a list. These are just, I mentioned, you know, we work with a lot of grocery stores. Around here, we're working with Roach Brothers and Natick and Weston, Sudbury Farms and Sudbury Land Sake Farm in Weston, Boston Area Gleaners in Acton. I was actually just there this morning on their farm, and Shaw's in Sudbury. So those are some of the partners we're recovering food from in this region. And then next slide, we're distributing. These are some of our partners, but around here, Sudbury Community Food Pantry, which they're actually based in Wayland, and they serve like Wayland and Sudbury and the surrounding towns. Metro West YMCA in Framingham, Real Truth Food Pantry and Faith in Food Pantry in Framingham, and also Feed Our Neighbor Inc. in Hudson. So those are some of the partners around here that we're working with. Can we jump to the next slide? And so this is some of the impacts that we're anticipating in 2026. So last year we recovered, I think it was 6.2 million pounds of food. This year we expect we're going to recover closer to 7 million pounds of food, and it's been growing every single year. We've actually added about 1 million pounds a year for the past few years. So in 2026 we expect 7 mil. That will reach about 500,000 people. That could create 5.6 million meals. That is worth $13.3 million, which is another piece that is really important to talk about, the economic impact of this, how much is going to waste. There's dollars and cents being wasted as well. And it will prevent the greenhouse gas emissions equivalent to 8.7 million miles driven by cars. So if you think about cars driving around 8.7 million miles and they're emitting emissions as they go, our work recovering food is preventing that equivalent amount of emissions. And so I talked about the methane that the food is releasing as it's rotting in landfills, and that's part of that. But there's more to it than just that. Can anybody think about, as I've described how we work, can anybody think about how else we might be preventing emissions? How else we're avoiding that impact? Does anybody have any thoughts about that one? Kind of a tricky question. Yeah,
Fewer driving for more concrete routes for the trucks.
say it again?
I guess fewer destinations for driving for the trucks. Maybe more carbon-friendly trucks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're talking about like the emissions our own trucks release, for sure. And that's something we actually did a lot of work this year to optimize the way our routes are set up so that we're not driving extra miles, and it was in part because of that. So yeah, that's definitely a way that we could be mindful of our emissions. But thinking about the food that we're recovering, how is recovering that food preventing emissions? Does anybody have thoughts, other thoughts? Yeah.
It's not going into the landfills, so saving more methane gas.
Yep, that's one. Other ways? Did I see again? No? Anyone? So this is like a big picture thing, and I wouldn't necessarily expect you all to like be able to extrapolate. So I'm gonna share, like, when we're recovering food, the people who are eating our food would have had to get that food a different way. If they didn't go to the pantry and get the food there, they would have had to get it in a different way. They would have probably, if they had the means to that week, gone to the store and bought the food. So that means something would have gotten wasted, and this person would have gone and bought an equivalent thing. So that other thing had to be produced. So that everything that went into the food that got wasted with it. So what are some things that go into the creation of food?
Water.
Water, tons of water, yes. Is your hand going up? No. What else? What else goes into creating food?
Packaging.
Yep, the plastic that our food gets wrapped in, totally. Which has to get created itself and then often ends up in a landfill.
Fuel.
Fuel, yeah, how? Like where?
Like the ovens or whatever to bake the foods, or like refrigerators and the cold.
Yep, totally, and that includes like refrigerated vehicles that are moving the food across the country, and the gas that those vehicles need to move the food, or the planes that are flying the food around.
Fertilizer.
Yeah, fertilizer, which is often petroleum-based and can be really damaging to the planet.
The effort that goes into making the food for like hands-on and machines.
Yeah, like human labor, people's time, people's physical effort, the money to pay those people, the effort to run the machines.
The preservatives that are in all of the food.
Yeah, like the creation when you've got like a product more than just an apple, but like some manufactured product. It's got all other ingredients in it. Totally. So a ton of stuff goes into the creation of food. So when that food gets wasted, all of that is also wasted. And so when we're recovering the food and ensuring that it's not wasted, we're ensuring that all of that waste doesn't occur. And that includes that like all of the emissions associated with the creation of that food are not for nothing. You know, it's like the emissions are happening no matter what, but let's at least make sure we're not letting that be a waste on top of the food being wasted. Okay, I'm gonna pause. Does anybody have any questions about like how we operate, where we operate, anything I've shared so far? Yes?
I just wanted to ask, like, do you do outreach? Like, why aren't you working with Wayland grocery stores?
Yeah, great question. So yes, we are constantly trying to work with more grocery stores and like any kind of partner that will donate food to us. I would bet money that our team has reached out to Wayland grocery stores, and what we often hear is that they're concerned about liability. Does anybody know what liability means? Huh? Yeah, pretty much. They're afraid they're gonna get sued. They're afraid they're gonna donate food, and then somebody is gonna eat it, and then they're gonna get sick, and then they're gonna get sued. But fun fact, that has never happened in the history of food donation, as far as everybody in the field knows. There's never been a lawsuit brought because food was donated, and then somebody got sick, and then the person who donated the food got sued. But there's a huge concern about liability, and the flip side is there are protections in place to protect against liability. There are laws that protect donors so that they won't get sued. But a lot of grocers and other like prospective partners of ours don't know about that, or even if they do know, they're still afraid, and they just like don't even want to go there. They don't want to donate. They don't want to risk it. So that's a big reason why vendors won't work with us. Sometimes they just feel like it's too much work, like it's an added workflow to add for their team, and they don't want to deal with that. But in some cases, it's because there's a local program recovering from them. So a lot of the partners we work with, the pantries that receive from us, do their own food recovery in addition to what we bring to them. And so there's just nothing to recover, and that's fine. Like if the food's already being recovered, great, and we'll just fill in the gaps where there are. But lots of reasons why, and we have a team who is constantly doing outreach to try to get more partners on board.
I've got another question.
Yeah, go for it.
Where does your funding come from?
Can we hold that? Because I've got a slide on that, and I'll tell you all about it. Cool. Okay.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
So you guys mentioned working around Massachusetts. Do you plan, or are you guys trying to expand your work across the U.S.?
Probably not across the U.S. There are food recovery organizations like ours all over, and we kind of partner with them and connect with them. But we are exploring expanding beyond Massachusetts, elsewhere in New England. I mentioned how we just put a new truck on the road in southeastern Mass, and we're practically in Rhode Island at this point, so we're exploring that. The big hurdle is like moving food across. We wouldn't move the food across state lines, but it's just a new beast. We have to kind of get into the, we just have to figure it out on the Rhode Island side of things. But yeah, we are exploring it, and we're hoping to do that probably in the next several years.
Are there legal reasons you can't move food across state lines?
Yes, it's like it's stuff about like taxes and about like, I don't even know the whole sum of it, but it's complicated is what I understand. So I thankfully am not the person having to figure that out. Yeah.
Do you pay for the food or do you get it donated?
It's completely donated to us, and then we provide it to everyone who receives it from us completely for free. So yeah, free all around, but the vendors who donate it to us can apply for federal tax incentives, so like a tax break. And if they didn't give it to us, they would have to put it either in a compost bin or the trash and have it hauled away, and they would have to pay for that. So we're actually saving the companies that donate to us a ton of money by taking it away for free, and they can get that tax incentive. So it's kind of an economic boon in that regard. Other questions?
If I'm composting at home, is that a better greenhouse effect or less greenhouse gases than if I throw it in the town dump? Like
Definitely.
Individual?
Yes.
So even though it's rotting in my own compost, that's a different process?
Yeah, it's like a different process, and it's gonna get used, it's got a better end use because you can use it to treat your soil as opposed to treating it in a different way. It's making the soil stronger. So it's got like those kind of ecological benefits. Prevention is always better than compost, but if you do have the waste at home, compost is a great way to go, for sure. Other questions? Cool. Keep it coming, friends. All right, next slide, please. Oh, let's play this. This is just showing a day on the road from Spoonfuls. See it in action. Yeah, and actually I have it queued up. You can.
Okay, I'll run.
Yeah, just to avoid that. It might not play it on, but yeah, you can just hit play there. And make it
Hi,
big.
I'm Nicole Kapori, and I'm the program director at Spoonfuls. Spoonfuls is a food recovery organization. We work to get perfectly good excess food from where it is to programs that could really make use of it. This prevents wasted food, and it also helps feed people. Let me show you how we work. This is where we pick up food from one of our grocery store partners. We also work with wholesalers, farms, farmers markets, and other food brands to make sure that good foods like this peach don't go to waste. Because in the United States, wasted food is a huge issue. In fact, at any given time, somewhere between 35 and 40% of all food in this country goes unsold or uneaten, while millions of people face food insecurity. And most of what gets wasted is fresh, perishable food. We have an opportunity to intercept some of that perfectly good food while it's still perfectly good to eat and ensure that it reaches programs and people that need it now. So behind me, you'll see Stephen and Relief, two of our ServSafe certified professional food recovery staff members. They're sorting through food that this grocery store set aside for Spoonfuls today. Stephen and Ralik work this route often, so they have a sense for what kinds of foods are typically available and which community organizations can most use that food. They're checking the food to make sure it meets standards for quality and safety. Because while the food might be close dated or recently past dated, it doesn't mean that it's not safe to eat or it doesn't taste good.
With our partnership with Spoonfuls, the food that is close to going to expiration or ending up in the trash in our stores is delivered to those in need and who can use it most. In addition to that, it allows us to reduce our environmental impact by ensuring that that food doesn't end up in the dumpster or in the garbage.
We have a few more pickups before we deliver all this food on the back of the refrigerated truck to programs like pantries, meal programs, shelters, senior centers, veterans programs, after-school programs, and more. It looks like we're almost done here, so let's go. Here we are outside Lifeboat Boston, a local pantry that receives weekly deliveries from Spoonfuls. This is our last stop of the day. The food we deliver here will be packed into 250 grocery bags. On this truck alone, today, Stephen and Ralik have recovered over 2,500 pounds of food. All of the food recovered today is delivered today because these folks need the food now. Multiply that across each of our routes, and each year at Spoonfuls, we keep over 5 million pounds of good food. Beyond the work we do every day here on the road, our team partners with community members, coalitions, and others working to identify and grow support for long-term solutions to the issues at the heart of our work: wasted food, hunger, and the climate emergency.
So you might have noticed some of the numbers in there are different from what I shared. This was made a couple years ago. So the 5 million is now 7 million, and the 35 to 40% is a little bit lower now. But the rest is pretty much the same. Does anybody have any questions about what you just saw?
How do you determine if the food is still good after it's expired?
It's a great question. So the group that I will be meeting with next, we'll be talking about that a lot, but the long and short of it is those dates are not expiration dates. Everybody calls them expiration dates. I did before I worked at Spoonfuls. But they are really more about quality and freshness. They're not really about safety. So there's, across our industry, there's commonly accepted standards for dates. So for example, milk is typically good like a couple days past the date. Like cereal or beans in a can or something can be good like weeks and months past the date. Yogurt can be days and weeks past the date. So we use standards that are commonly accepted across like food banking and food recovery, that we feel very confident the food is still good past those dates. And we provide that guidance to our partners so they can kind of communicate with their clients about it. Other questions? Yeah?
Is there food that you don't take beyond the standard? So like Dunkin' Donuts, at the end of the day, gets rid of all their donuts. Is that not the kind of thing that you're interested in?
Yeah, so our focus is on fresh. Thank you for that. I should have said that at some point. About 90% of what we recover is fresh. So a lot of fruits and vegetables, meat, dairy, and even like prepared food. We will take sweets and bread and, you know, like the kind of shelf-stable things you can find in the store, but it's not our priority. So if the truck is filling up, we're gonna leave the bread behind, we're gonna leave the sweets behind. If we've got space for it and we have a partner on the roster that we know will love it, like around the holidays we get a lot of like holiday cakes, and if we can, we'll take some because like the kids programs love those. But our focus is fresh because that's the stuff that's hardest to come by. For family facing food insecurity, if you've got a limited budget and you're going to the store, like the fresh produce is probably the first thing coming off the list because it tends to be most expensive and it might not like fill you up as well. So, you know, have you feeling full. So that's why we prioritize produce and meat and dairy. Other questions? Yeah?
How can high schoolers or just like anybody get involved with this?
That's a great question. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end. I'll talk a little bit about advocacy too, but I will say, like from my perspective, it's really important for you to know about this and to talk to people about this because, like just a show of hands so far in our conversation, who has learned something you didn't know before today, right? I think like for a lot of people, it's like we all eat, and probably if we think about it, we realize that we're wasting food sometimes, but I don't think people realize the magnitude of the issue, and I think it's really important to talk about it because it makes people aware. So we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. I have a few more slides and then we can jump into more of that. Oh yeah, okay, so this gets to your question, Ed. This is, these are the things we recover for every 10 boxes of food. About 9 are filled with the fresh, perishable stuff, and that's what we prioritize. Next slide, please. Yeah, so let's look at like why all this food is available to be recovered. Because you're probably wondering, like, why are they throwing it out? If it's perfectly good, why are they getting rid of it? So jump to the next slide. A lot of it is imperfect, but it's still good. So if you look at those bananas, like that is, my 2 little kids at home, that is the exact way they want their bananas to look when they eat them. And if that were in our house, we would eat it. But if you go to the store, what do the bananas usually look like on the shelf? Green. Yeah, they're usually green. Maybe they're starting to turn yellow, but you're going to be hard pressed to find a banana that looks like that on a supermarket shelf because nobody wants to buy that. Even though you would eat it at home, what you want to buy is the green banana that you know is going to be good for you for the next couple days rather than something you have to eat right away and you might waste it. Which is so ironic because then it gets wasted in the end anyways, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't because we'll recover it, but imperfect but still good. Other examples of this are like, sometimes you'll see like the giant strawberry that people are sort of like, why is that strawberry so giant and nobody wants it? Or the carrots that have like 2 little legs or, you know, funky stuff like that, that there's nothing wrong with that food, but it doesn't meet the standards that we all expect. And so the stores don't even want to put it on the shelf because they just know people aren't going to buy it. Next slide. We talked about dates. A lot of the stuff is nearing the date on its label, and we use our standards and our guidance. So our team is well trained on that, and they work really hard to help our partners understand why we have those standards. So a lot of what we take is at or near the date on its label, and you know the good news is it's still good. And for most people who are receiving this food at the various programs we're working with, they need that food right away and they're going to use that food right away. So they're well within sort of the date ranges that we feel are appropriate for eating that food. Next slide. A lot of it is made fresh daily. So, you know, a fruit cup or a sandwich in like the grab and go section of the store. You know, or like sometimes they have like party platters or whatever, and they kind of market those as this is made fresh daily, this is something for your party tonight, and so the day is done and they don't want to sell it the next day. But again, like in my household, if I cut up a bunch of strawberries and we eat half of them today, we're not going to get rid of the other half, we're going to eat the other half tomorrow, it's going to go in our fridge and we'll eat it. But it's a different standard that consumers have in the store, and the stores have limited space in the back of house and in the front of house, and they don't want to keep anything on the shelf that is not guaranteed to sell. So they move it out as fast as they can. Next slide. What's going on here?
Upside down label.
Upside down label. This happens more than you would think. This was like a very exciting recovery because peanut butter is just like such, you know, I mean, if you're not allergic, for kids love a PB&J. It's a great source of protein. It's just a really like hearty, healthy food. This peanut butter was perfect. There was nothing wrong with this peanut butter. Whoever put the labels in the labeling machine did it upside down, and it got to the store, and the store was like, well, we can't sell this. Even though, I don't know about you all, but like this is natural peanut butter. In my house, we store that upside down because of the oil situation. So they could have like done that, but again, it's about consumer standards, and like people are going to look at a peanut butter jar and be like, why is this peanut butter jar upside down? And so they're just not even going to bother. They're not going to touch it with a 10-foot stick. So we got it. We get this a lot. Like if you've ever noticed any of your favorite brands, sometimes they'll change the look on their packaging, and it will say like new look, same great taste, or something like that. Nothing wrong with the old look. The food in the package is the same. It's just the package that's different. But as soon as they change their branding, those manufacturers or those companies will say, take everything that's our old branding off your shelf. We don't want you selling it anymore. So that stuff will get pulled, even if there's like boxes and boxes in the back that could be sold. So we get a lot of that kind of stuff, factory mistakes or like sort of packaging changes. Next slide. And then a lot of it is surplus. So sometimes, I would say this is like surplus, and I would add like odds and ends. So surplus meaning, like in a grocery store, they'll order apples to come in on a Monday and apples to come in on a Wednesday. And do apples last more than 2 days? Yeah. It wasn't a trick question. The answer is yes. Apples last more than 2 days. So if like the new apples come in on Wednesday and the Monday apples are still in the store to be sold, they're not going to keep the Monday apples. They're going to put the freshest apples out, and any of the Monday apples that are still in the store, they're going to cull them, is what they call it. They pull it off the shelf, they throw it in a box hopefully for us and not for the compost bin. But then also like they'll go through, and you can see this zucchini has like a tiny little nick on it. Again, if that were in my house, I would probably just cook that as it is or cut that off if it were a problem, but people don't want to buy that in the store. So the odds and ends that get pulled, the excess that just didn't get sold quickly enough, we get a lot of that. That's the vast majority of the produce we get falls into that category. Next slide. So this is one of my favorite slides because I think this really helps wrap our head around the scale and the scope of the issue. So there are 10 apples here, right? 10? No. I don't know how many apples. But anyways, those apples represent all of the food that goes unsold or uneaten in the United States. And if we could recover just 54% of that food, so a little over half, if we could recover a little over half of the food that's going unsold or uneaten, that's enough to feed everybody facing food insecurity. So if you think about that, there's enough food to be recovered that's like twice as much as what we need to feed everybody who's facing food insecurity. So that's how much food is being wasted. That's how much opportunity there is with food recovery. And so while we're just working here in Massachusetts, like when we think about this at Spoonfuls, I talked about expansion, this is why we're expanding, because there's all this potential. There's all of this perfectly good food going to waste that could be recovered, and it would go to good use. There are a lot of households that could make good use of it right away. So it's a huge issue, huge scale, but also huge potential. Does anybody have questions about this or like anything in general? Oh, it's okay, we can, yeah. Okay. Questions? Yes?
Okay, so I'm not quite sure if this correlates, but when the government cut federal funds for the SNAP program, did you guys find yourselves working more? And
Yes.
like maybe stores are donating more foods?
Very good question. So you all might remember, so firstly, yes, there's SNAP cuts that have already taken effect, and there are more coming. Over the next couple years, the state is going to lose a ton of federal funding that would have been going into the SNAP program, which, if you're not familiar, SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Used to be called food stamps, and it's a federally funded program that provides money to households to buy food. It's been federally funded for like as long as it's existed, and the current administration has changed the rules such that states have to foot the bill for that, and there's no state in the country that is going to be able to foot the bill for that. So we are already seeing an uptick in demand. We're seeing more programs reaching out to us saying we need more food, our communities are having even more difficulty getting the food they need and want. So we've already started seeing that. We're expecting even more. When there was a government shutdown back around Halloween, SNAP was affected too. That's separate from the cuts that we're talking about, but it was affected, and there were a couple weeks where folks who should have been receiving SNAP weren't receiving it in Massachusetts, and it was chaos. Like all of our partners were panicked because they couldn't meet the need, and the added challenge is even if we suddenly had a ton more food, which we don't, like just because there's more need doesn't mean like more food materializes necessarily. Even if we could provide more food to our partners, they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to distribute that food. Like they need more staff, they need more volunteers, they need more storage space. Like there's all these logistical reasons why you can't just turn on a dime and respond to those kinds of cuts. So it's very turbulent times in our world, frankly, because we're all bracing for these SNAP cuts. There's been a lot of other federal funding, like the United States Department of Agriculture provides a lot of grants that help food banks buy food and help schools buy food, and a lot of that has been cut. So we haven't been affected by any of that. That doesn't really touch our funding streams, but it affects our partners, and then that trickles up to us because then they're saying we need more. So it's really big. Everybody's kind of bracing for it. There's not really a silver bullet for how to respond there. It's very challenging times in this world, and it's going to get harder as those SNAP cuts roll out. So big deal for sure. Other questions? Okay, let's jump to the next slide. So I want to talk a bit about like who works at Spoonfuls and what we do, and we can talk about like the funding piece as well. So these are some of the folks on our team, and like we have people with all different skill sets. A lot of the folks in this picture are our folks working on the road and moving food around, but we also have like our administrative team, so they manage like all the systems we use. Our programs team who moves food around, they use like logistics software, and we all use like relationship management software, and we all use Google, and like they manage all of that stuff, so we all have the systems and tools we need to do our work. We can jump to the next slide. You were asking where our money comes from, so I can talk a little bit about that, but I'll start by saying our development team are the people who handle that. It's called development in the nonprofit world. Development means like the folks who are helping raise money for the organization. So about half of our funding comes from grants and foundations. So community foundations or family foundations, which are organizations that have a ton of money for like they have it for different reasons, and they invest it in ways that the pot of money continuously grows, and then they distribute it into the community to address community needs. We get a lot of money from those kinds of foundations, from private family foundations, and like other types of grants. We don't get a lot of government funding. We've had a few small state and federal grants in the past, but we don't have a ton, which frankly in this moment is a good thing because we would be losing money if that were the case. We have a couple big events each year that are like these big fundraising events, and we raise a lot of money through those. We have somebody on our development team is specifically responsible for individual giving, which means working with donors, like just individuals who want to donate, and kind of generating that. And then a lot of corporations. So some of those corporations are like the stores we recover from. Their corporate headquarters will donate to us, but we kind of try to partner with corporations of all kinds and generate some funds through that. So our development team handles that. We can jump to the next slide. And then I am part of the communications and public affairs team. So our communications team are really out there telling the story of what we do, why we do it. If you see us on social media, that's our communications team. If you receive an email from Spoonfuls, that's our communications team. They made this beautiful slide deck that I'm using today. But they are responsible for helping everyone understand what we do, how we do it, the impacts, and just what's going on day to day. And then I'm the public affairs side of that team, and so I manage our education and our advocacy work. And so to the question of like, what can you do? Advocacy is a really big part of that. I'll say that at Spoonfuls, we're addressing an immediate need. People need to eat. People who are facing food insecurity need food now, and they need to be fed now. And we and food banks and the food pantries we work with are addressing that need. But it's not sustainable to think that we can continuously provide food into that system and solve a problem. We'll be feeding people, and that's an important impact, but it's not going to provide any solutions. So our advocacy work is where we start thinking about systems change. So does anybody know what advocacy is? Can anybody tell me what you think advocacy is? It means a lot of things, so there are a lot of right answers to this. Has anybody heard of the word advocacy before? Yeah.
Like speaking out and representing a certain community, a certain direction.
Yeah, totally. Speaking out, representing a community, your interests, their interests. Mm-hmm. Representing to who? Do you have thoughts on that? Like representing them to speaking out to?
Create a better environment for
Yeah, you're doing it to like bring change, and you can do it towards legislators, you can do it towards state representatives or members of Congress, senators, mayors, but you can also do it to, programs. You can say like, we need your program to be more robust. You can do it by communicating with your neighbors and talking about the issues and ensuring that they're informed. And that's what I was saying to you earlier, is like, you need to, by talking to neighbors and informing people about this issue, when you know better, you do better. And that's an important piece of advocacy. So can we jump to the next slide? I forget. Yeah, so I think we're running short on time, so let's just jump to do the next, and then the next. I want to share with you all, this is, do you mind taking one and passing? What I'm passing around are cards for something called the Food Waste Challenge at Spoonfuls, and I'll pick up the extras on the far end. This is a really valuable way to start plugging into advocacy. So yeah, I think those will make their way around, yeah. If you go on our website and you take the Food Waste Challenge, what it's going to do is it's going to plug you into a lot of our resources, including our blog, which is really informative, including some tools that you can use to kind of assess your own food waste. There's a calendar on there, and it's like a Food Waste Challenge calendar, so it gives you sort of a tip to try every day in a month. And it's all these different ways you might be wasting food that you didn't think about previously. And so when we talk about advocacy, yes, that means you can talk to your legislator and people in power and tell them what you think, but just cluing yourself and others into the issues is a really important way to do it, and this is a really useful tool to do that. So I would highly recommend and encourage that you all take the challenge, do it with your families, do it with your friends. You can scan the QR code on here and then pass the card on to someone else. But it's a really great way to just get plugged into like the broader world of food waste advocates who are trying to make a difference. And it is quite an ecosystem of folks doing this. So I would highly recommend that. Okay, so I think I'm gonna be done talking for the moment. Does anybody have other sort of final questions, thoughts, reflections about any of this, about the challenge, about advocacy, about the team at Spoonfuls? Yeah.
I don't know if this is putting you on the spot, but something that concerns me is apathy.
Apathy.
Among our audience.
Uh-huh.
So, why should these people care?
Yeah, great question. So, when we talk about the impacts of food waste, I think for young people in particular, I really feel like the climate piece is a really big piece. I think your generation is more tuned into the climate emergency than most. So I think that's a big part of it.
Thank you.
Yes.